Hello, friends. Welcome back to the School of Self-Worth. Wow, last week's conversation with author Kristi Coulter sparked so much conversation and resonated with so many of you. I am so delighted to welcome Kristi back for part 2 of our conversation, where she breaks down what it's really like to live a life using her greatest talent, writing. In this episode, Kristi talks about the key reminders that keep her self-worth strong while launching a major personal project that was 4 years in the making. This is a must-listen episode for any high achievers out there considering their next evolution. If you are a high-achieving career woman who wants to get on the right side of your intuition and purpose in 30 days, DM me 30 on Instagram at Nicole Song. I've got something for you. Okay, let's do this. Let's get going on this conversation with Kristi.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to pivot now to where you are as a writer, because it also takes quite a bit of self-worth to be a writer and put a book out into the world. And so I'm curious about your journey. Yeah. So about your journey since you've left, because you're like, okay, there was that place where Amazon was like filling that role in a big way for a while. And then how do you navigate it for yourself now? Like, what did it teach you now that you're on your own and being a writer and putting books into the world, which is in very vulnerable books about with sharing very personal experiences, you know, all these coworkers that you worked with and experiences you had with them. What has that journey been like for you now?
It's been fascinating. I mean, when I first started writing, and I got a graduate degree in creative writing in my early 20s, and I had always planned to be a fiction writer. And so now I've published 2 memoirs, and that self-revelation is, in some ways, it's not that hard for me, because the best memoirs, I've always been like writer first and like person who wants to help people or teach lessons or something second, or maybe even third, fourth, fifth. I'm a real writer's writer, like a literary writer. So I don't mind making myself look bad. I know that for me, the best memoirs are never the ones where the person is just some incredible hero or mysteriously always victimized by these terrible people around them. Like the best memoirs like are about like, you are also complicit in your own life, your own experiences. And so I really enjoy that. I enjoy writing to figure out like, well, what was happening then, both with the people around me and with me? Like, why was I thinking that? Why did I think I was unemployable? This kind of thing. So that's fun. I also love the kind of wide network that publishing, because I publish fairly successfully. So I just sort of know people everywhere. I hear from readers, I'm friends with other writers. I feel like I could go to like any country and probably know somebody where I could be like, hey, we kind of know each other. Do you want to have coffee? That makes my world feel so much bigger. And I love that. And I love making it safe for other women to tell their stories. With my first book, which is about drinking and sobriety, I heard from so many women who were kind of like me, like middle-class professional women drinking way too much wine, who thought, am I an alcoholic? Like, I'm not in the gutter. I'm not like fitting that stereotype of what an alcoholic is, who were like, oh, you helped me to realize that, yeah, I am. And also that it doesn't matter if I call myself that or not. Like, my life was not working for me. So you start to create community and help other people come forward. What I think is hard is, I miss the structure of having like a corporate job. The problem with writing is it's just you sitting at a laptop all day, every day. And that's awful. I mean, you just start to feel like you're losing your mind at some point. Yeah. COVID really brought home to me how I'm an introvert, but introversion means you need something to react to, and so people kept saying, oh, I bet you love this because you're a writer. And I was like, no, I hate it. I want to be out there. I need to react to the world and see things and see friends. And even when you're writing memoir, you need stimulus in your present to bring back the past. So I kind of miss that structure. I miss knowing what my role was. I I miss knowing like, oh, I know how to go to this meeting and do this thing. I'm still looking for ways to find that in my life. I teach now. And so that helps. But with teaching, like you have to be in charge. and, and sometimes, and even when I was a boss at Amazon, but like you still are not, it's a team, and so I'm still trying to deal with that. And also with the fact that when you write a book, I mean, this book took 4 years to write. That's a very long time to go without validation from anyone but yourself and like the 3 people in my writing group. And you're also taking a huge risk. Is this book any good? Are people going to like it? Are they going to buy it? When you are working in a corporate job, even if your timelines are long, you're still getting that feedback loop. Mm-hmm. Is this going well? Do we need to change course? How does my boss seem? How do my coworkers seem? And that is tough. And I think I'm still in the process of figuring out how to live like that and be okay, honestly. Not fall into existential crises, which I do on a semi-regular basis still.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about your books too. And I loved what you said too about for you, that you're more interested in the literary side of it, of like really making a compelling story, which actually for me, like reading your book, I was like, oh, it makes sense the way you write and what you're sharing about it. And it is very powerful. So thank you for that as a writer. I'm like, oh, I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about, because, then there's like that role of like, okay, like you're totally fine with sharing your life that way. And then there's the worthiness of like, do people like this book? Is anyone going to read it? Is anyone going to buy it? And what do you do when you get into those kinds of entanglements in your head?
Well, I freak out, first of all. Then I have enough, professional writer friends at this point to know that everybody feels that way. I mean, I know people who are vastly successful, like household names who still feel this way about new books. So it's unfortunate, but apparently it never really stops. And I try to find other things in my life that I can then focus on. I'm really into fitness. I love to run. I love to lift weights. I like to cook. I try to have like other sources of self-esteem, and I try to remember that I care so much because it's important to me. It would be kind of sad if I didn't care, if I didn't feel vulnerable, if I didn't feel like I was making something that I really want people to like. Writing is really hard, as you know. And so it's like, why do it unless it really matters? I also have a really healthy separation at this point between the real me and the me in the book. I mean, of course, this is my true story and my real life experience, but that person is a character. She's a distillation of who I am. I heard Cheryl Strayed on a podcast before I'd published anything saying, if you publish a novel, people will love or hate your main character. If you publish a memoir, they will love or hate you. The person they think is you. Mm-hmm. And this is absolutely true. So with my viral essay and my first book, I noticed that the bad reader reviews were never like, well, I didn't think this was written well, or the structure failed me. It was usually, well, I don't like her. Mm. I don't like the choices she made in life. I think she's lived wrong. She married wrong. She drank wrong. And so at first you're kind of like, whoa, but then you're like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what I did. And so the fact that I'm a literary writer really helps me because I'm not trying to be a model for anybody. Mm. If I am a model for someone, great, but it's accidental. I'm not saying live like I live and everything will be terrific, So at this point, I could tell you at this point the things people will complain about the me in this book. They won't like me for like reasons X, Y, and Z. Mm. And okay, I'm fine with it, Yeah. So at least on that front, I feel healthy. If I were like a self-help writer, I think I would be much more nervous about the fact that people might not think I was worthy of, telling them, suggesting how they might live.
Yeah. Well, it's really what you're sharing, I think, is also very powerful. Like it's literary writer, but it's just powerful to be like, well, it's a character. It's something I've written. It is my
Mhm.
life. And
Yeah.
that's not all of who I am because A, how is that even possible? You can't put of all of who you are in a few hundred
You
pages,
just
It's not
can't.
even
No,
possible.
no. With
Yeah.
every, I teach memoir writing, and I always say to people, there's always going to be stuff going on in your life that doesn't make it into your memoir because either you choose not to write about it, which is you're absolute right,
Totally.
or it just doesn't, if you're writing a memoir about your marriage, like maybe, yeah, you mention your job a couple of times, but you're not going to go deeply into it. Like a memoir, every person could probably write 10 memoirs about their life, because a memoir is, it's a distillation. It's not your autobiography. It's not like, well, I was born in
Let me
Columbus,
tell you the
Georgia,
whole
in
thing.
1970. And, like nobody needs that. So teaching it and reminding students of this constantly. And I find that when I tell students, like, you need to think of yourself as a character, the writing gets much better. And
Mhm.
also they get more able to do the writing because they're not thinking I'm exposing my raw inner self to the world. It's I am choosing a framework to reveal truths.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
love that. That's beautiful. And I'd love to go back to one point you had too when you said by the end of Amazon you were starting to like yourself. So now that you have, I love that you have been able to have, like, you separated from Amazon. Your
Mhm.
book work also has its own place. And would you say that you like yourself now even more than you did when you left the company?
Yeah. I mean, most of the time, I think. Writing this book was really interesting because for the first year or so, I was convinced I was writing a memoir of failure.
Mm.
This was a book about a woman who failed. And I remember my husband kind of looking at me funny when I would talk about that. And you could tell he was like, I'm just not going to say anything because I'm just, but she's really convinced. But it was not a lot of fun, and it wasn't going well. And then I realized, well, then I thought, no, this is a book about trauma, about long-term trauma, which, Amazon did traumatize me. But that also didn't feel quite right.
Mm.
And finally, it hit me. I thought, this is a coming of age story. I was in my 30s and 40s, but it was
Mhm.
like, this is a hero's journey in its way. This is a story of a woman who grows up. And suddenly, the writing got a lot better. It came a lot easier. And I started to see myself differently as
Mhm.
someone who grew at this place. It also made me look a little more kindly on Amazon as a place where this kind of growth, for good reasons and bad, was possible. That I could stay at this vast company and have all these different experiences and get paid for it, and so, yeah, I do think of myself now as someone who, grew up and now is probably growing up again. um, I feel like each phase of my life is probably going to be me growing up a little bit more, and then I'll die.
Yes.
Supposedly, we'll see.
The rumor has
Yeah,
it
yeah,
at some
yeah.
point.
I'm not convinced, but yeah. So I think I see myself as a work in progress. But yeah, do I love myself all the time? No, but I do feel like I have things to I am an okay person. I have things to offer the world. And I'm using
Absolutely.
my real talents,
To do
which
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, that's beautiful. Well, and it really is, it does feel very much like a coming of age, like through that whole process, because it is so deep and so intense and so many phases
yeah,
of the book. And then at the end, you're like, oh, like, and now I really am free to do
yeah.
what's next.
What I want. I really
Mhm.
wanted to write, there have been plenty of like journalistic books about Amazon, and there have been books about policy, in
Mm.
tech. And I'm not that kind of writer. So I really did want to write like a very personal book.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the fact that I'm a literary writer comes into, I'm not a journalist. I don't have that skill set. I have policy opinions as a citizen,
Mhm.
but as a writer, like I don't care about writing
Mhm.
about that. So that's why I thought, what I can do for the literature of Amazon or the literature of women's careers is let someone be over my shoulder for 12 years
Yeah.
in my specific peculiar career. you know?
Well, I'm curious too, though. I know you're a literary writer, and I'm still sure there will be so many women who, whether they're at Amazon or other companies, will want to say, Kristi, I need some advice. Like I'm in the thick of
Mhm.
it. This is happening for me. So what would
Yeah,
you say to them? Like what's one thing they can do or one step they can start to take to help themselves without necessarily quitting their job, which could be down the
right.
road, but like to be there?
I think the thing that Amazon really taught me was how to be comfortable with ambiguity. It's actually one of the company's like explicit core values. And time after time, I was thrown into situations where I didn't quite know what I was doing. And I had to just kind of figure it out as I went along. And I started to realize that my ability to do that was a superpower. Because when you know that you can kind of figure stuff out, you'll start to seek out opportunities where you don't know everything in advance. Because I do talk to women about this sometimes, and I say, get comfortable with the idea that you can be uncomfortable. That you should, yoga taught me that. There's
Mhm.
pain where you just like get out of the pose, and there's discomfort, which is just like I'd really like to get out of this pose, but you can stay. And so I think be willing to have some discomfort. Start to think of your career less as a straight line, unless you're going for a certain goal, in which case go for it. But I at Amazon, like I worked in publishing, I worked in grocery, I worked in retail, I worked in HR, and it's a hard story to tell on a resume, but it's a narrative. It all lines up. And I think that if you think of your if you could boil down what you love to do and what you're great at, and start looking outside of like just job titles, the
Mhm.
world starts to open up to you. And then the other thing is to realize you are better than you think. I mean, there's data showing that women won't apply for a job unless they meet all the listed criteria, and men will apply if they meet like half. Maybe 70. If everybody could do 70%, I would be happy. You do not need to have everything, all those bullet points. Like I participated in almost 900 interviews at Amazon. So like trust me, I have credibility on this. I hired amazing people all the time who did not fit every bullet point.
Mm.
And I think women feel they, and I don't want to, I'm saying women hold themselves back. I don't want to be one of those people saying, oh, it's just because women don't take initiative or women don't negotiate, because we have lots of data to show that women are punished sometimes when they do that.
Mm.
But I do think that women have been enculturated to go for the job that's just right at the level where they are now, or where they think they've got part of it nailed, but they've got all of it nailed. They're not taking that risk or saying, hey, I'm putting my hand up for this thing that seems big for me, but here's why I think I could do it. And here's how I'm going to close the gap between where I am now and where I need to be in this job. So just, you got to like strut a little bit,
Mhm.
peacock.
Well, peacocking, and then also what I heard you saying is uncertain, like being okay with like uncertainty, ambiguity, like those two
Yeah.
things. And then when you can
Yeah.
do that, I mean, isn't that a life skill, to be able to handle uncertainty?
Huge life skill. And the other thing is, like, when I was at Amazon, I moved to these subject areas where I didn't know anything. Like I didn't know
Mhm.
the vocabulary of publishing. I didn't know about how to sell food. But if you have a core skill set, like I was a writer, I had been a product manager, I could manage people, I could think critically. The rest of it's just subject matter.
Mhm.
I mean, now, could you apply this to nuclear physics or surgery? Like, no, there are places training is very important, but you just learn these things as you go. And so you've got to distinguish between your skills and new subject matter that you would need to learn. And figuring that out was hugely important for me, because it made me realize, like, oh yeah, I could go into completely new areas, and as long as I've got the core ready, and things like critical thinking help you to learn what you need to know,
Mhm.
then I felt by the end, I was like, yeah, I could go into our Army recruiting program. I could go into this, like anything but like hardcore tech or, law, something where I would need a special degree, I thought, yeah, I could do this. And that's an exhilarating feeling. And that really opens up the working world to you, as long as you're finding companies that also understand that mindset.
Mhm. Well, what you're saying is very powerful too. It's like know what you really have great skill sets in, and then also understand that you are capable of learning. And if you're willing to take some risks, right? Like combine both what you're great at and taking some risks, like that's when things really
Yeah.
open up, right?
And I taught myself some things, like people at Amazon were incredibly good at Excel. And I thought Excel was essentially like graph paper on a screen when I got there.
Isn't
I
it?
never had to use it. Like, it has grid lines and everything. And so I was really embarrassed. And I was like, well, I'm not going to be like, hi, could someone teach me, Excel? So I just learned the basics. I literally got like an Excel for Dummies book, and I learned
Mm.
what I needed to know. And I had a project manager who worked for me, who I got to know well enough that I trusted her. And one day I was like, so this VLOOKUP thing, could you just show me? And she was like, sure, um, and so you figure it out. But like, I realized I did not have to be a genius at Excel.
Mhm.
It just, it doesn't matter. The world is not like waiting to catch you out in a mistake. And you can be scrappy about what you admit to needing help with and what you can just kind of figure out on your own. The other thing is I hear women talk a lot about like, how do I get over my imposter syndrome? Um, I think everybody has imposter syndrome, including a lot of men.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that it's a matter of getting over it. I think you just have to figure out how to move forward. Because if you're getting into bigger and bigger roles, or if you're going into new spaces in your job or your life, you're going to be set up for imposter syndrome over and over again, because you're always going to be in spaces where you don't know everything. So to me, it's better to just have this learning mindset and be like, yep, here I am again, like the one who knows the least, rather than think I'm an imposter. Like if you started to play piano and you were taking lessons and you weren't very good yet, you wouldn't think of yourself as an imposter. You would just be like, well, I haven't played piano very long. So obviously with a corporation, there's more riding on it than that. But I remember one of my VPs, one of my bosses, stepped into a big new role where she suddenly had a lot of tech teams under her for the first time. And she told me, I told them I'm going to ask a lot of questions, but I'll try not to ask the same question twice.
Mhm.
So thank you for your patience. And I was like, that's really good. I'm going to ask questions, but I'm telling them that I'm really going to listen and process and try to continually be learning. And that's the kind of mindset and attitude I try to have. And also with the people I managed, to be like, ask questions, try not to ask them twice when you can help it.
Well, you bring up a good point that I thought you did well in the book around how, like, really the system at Amazon also didn't actually serve the men. As much as it was really hard
Right.
for women, it didn't serve men either. And I think that's
No.
true in general of like
Oh
our
yeah.
society, right? Like we always are like
Yeah.
the cost feels so great to a certain segment, but then actually it doesn't serve anybody. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the biggest underlying message always to remember.
Yeah. I find often when we hear about these big sexual harassment cases in the
Mhm.
media, um, you'll underlying it is that men were bullied.
Yep.
Women were sexually harassed and bullied, and men were bullied. It's never a healthy climate for anyone. And I think at Amazon, or like it'll be that it was bad for like what's bad for women is often bad for introverts in general, I think.
Mhm.
Like Amazon has this very aggressive culture of thinking on your feet and being loud and argumentative. And it's not just women who are trained or sometimes temperamentally not inclined to that. Like there's also, men. Like I remember reading Susan Cain's book Quiet about introverts, and all the great leaders like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, who also needed time to go away and think and reflect. And Amazon's just not set up for that. So I remember thinking, like, yeah, a lot of men are not served by this either. And I don't think anybody is really well served long term by a culture of fear. Having people terrified is a great way to produce short term results, maybe,
Yeah.
and a terrible way to produce long term results. It's a
Yeah.
great way to produce lots of turnover, which is
And
expensive
stress.
and costly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And stress and breakdowns and,
Yes.
not good things.
No. Thank you so much for sharing all of those insights. I really feel like there's so much for people to learn. I know it's a literary memoir and it's a character. There's so much to learn for anybody who's really on that journey of like, who am I? Which is really
Yeah.
the question at the heart of it. Like, who am I? Company and job defining about me, and how do I find myself at the end of it?
Yeah, I do think like, any woman who's kind of either in the middle of her career, at the beginning of her career, could find something in here of like, oh, I've been in this place. And how did this woman, even though my circumstances were different, how did she think her way out of it and experiment her way out of it? And,
Yeah.
and I do think it'll be helpful to people that way.
Yeah. I have a few rapid fire questions for you to complete our conversation. So let's start with this. What was the last thing you watched on TV?
Broadchurch season 3. It's a British UK mystery, and we love it. And we're on season 3, and it's almost over, and I'm going to be grief struck.
Okay, good to know. I love mysteries. Fun.
Yes.
What is on your nightstand?
Oh, there's a lamp, earplugs, because my husband, he used to snore. He doesn't really anymore, but I still wear them. Laneige lip mask. It's the balm I put all over my Kindle, because we like dark in the bedroom, so I read on a Kindle at night. And I think that's probably it.
Cool.
A glass of water sometimes. Yeah.
A glass of water. What are you reading right now?
I am reading the manuscript of a friend's biography of the band REM.
Cool.
I am an REM super fan, and it's so good. And it's just in manuscript, so I'm reading that. And I just finished reading, I love mysteries. And I just finished reading the new Lisa Jewell mystery. The name of it is escaping me now. Her titles tend to run together, but she's a British mystery writer, and she's awesome, and it was great. So
awesome. I threw
if people
that
go look for the new one on it,
they'll find it. I just threw that one in because I was like, I'm just curious about what you're reading right now.
Yeah. I'm always reading some kind of thriller or mystery. I love literary work too, but I can read a mystery a day.
Awesome. Fun. Yeah. So fun. Okay. Well, what about this? When was the last time you tried something new, and what was it?
Ooh, good question. Yes. I just bought a box jump thing, a plyo box, because I realized I need to add some kind of plyometrics to my workout routine. And so I bought a really sturdy box for box jumping, and I tried it. It turns out I think you need to do things to work up to being able to jump onto a box.
Something is scary. The first time you do it, you're like, I'm supposed to just jump on a box.
Yeah. And I got a nice padded one and everything, but I was like, this is tall. So I was like, this is very me to just be like, well, I'll just get the box and then I'll jump onto the box. And then to be like, probably not. So I'm doing squat jumps now, and and like I'm using it for step ups. But that was probably the last thing. I like to do new things because I like to make myself aware that failing is fine. Like I remember going to a glass blowing workshop once as a team building event, and everybody else made like the little ring we were supposed to, and it was beautiful. And mine, it was like they put a 3-year-old in there, just been like, here, make something. And I was like, here's my lump, but it was great. I had fun, and I was like, okay, well, there's something else where you have lots of room to learn.
Well, that's a great hot tip. Like, if you want to be comfortable with failure, try some new things so that you just get comfortable with like not being good at something. I like
find some low stake things that bouldering, another one. I have a long list of them that you could try, because you don't know if you'll like them until you try them. And like, if you fail at glass blowing, I mean, I guess something bad could happen, but it probably won't.
Yeah. Take a class of something new that you don't know how to do, and then just see how it goes. Yeah.
And if you don't like it, fine. Don't go back.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Okay. Last one. What are your top 3 most used emojis on your phone?
The laugh one. And it always has little tears, and it's the closest ones that's like laughing. And I'm always like, is this laughing? Is this crying till you're laughing? Or is it, laughing till you're crying? Or I don't know, but I use it a lot. Probably the smile, and probably the fire.
Fire. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I like to, I'm a little bit of a sexter, I guess. So, so the fire.
That's awesome. Well, Kristi, what a pleasure to have you here and to connect with you about your book.
Oh,
It really, it's an honor to have you on here. And I follow her on Facebook, and I love just all their musings and thoughts you have about what's happening in our
oh,
culture.
thank
So she's
you.
always sharing things in the world that are super interesting in addition to
Yeah.
her book. And Exit Interview comes out September 12th. So make
Yes.
sure that you get your copy, pre-order, get it all in, and
Yes.
really
Yes.
support this
Do
amazing
that.
this amazing creation that you've put into the world. And we'll have links to get the books and links to Kristi as well in the show notes. So, Kristi, thank you so much for being on School of Self Worth. We are so grateful for you to be here and to share all of your
Thank
experience and wisdom
you.
with us.
I had a great time and it was amazing to catch up with you again. We'll have to do it in real life sometime.
For sure. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Okay. Take care.
You too.
Bye.